Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, it's time!
3 on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game!
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Float game for the win! Ayla's gone. Goodbye. Touchdown, Indy. Woo! IU. America. They got a football team now.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Oh, now, here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome into a Monday edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio, where we'll get your week kicked off correctly. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith, sitting in for Jim Coyle. His recovery is still ongoing. He's still not quite there yet where he needs to be, so he's still a little bit behind in terms of getting back up on that horse. But I do expect him to be up and at 'em here shortly. As with anything involving surgeries and things of that magnitude, the word patience is always used in discussions with doctors and so forth and so on. Well, Jim's kind of like me. Patience is not a great word for us to try to embolden around us. So again, he's doing well and in good spirits, and look for him to be back at it shortly. Today, we got a great show coming up. We got Greg Rakestraw going to join us. Of course, we got to talk about Team USA in Belgium tonight in the World Cup. Nothing better than a little bit of sports controversy. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes, as well as the IndyCar at Mid-Ohio. Of course, Scott Dixon making a decision as far as his ride next year. And we maybe have time to catch up on Greg's voice of the Indy 11, I believe, still there in Indy, but he's coming up first. Later then, we got Dustin Dopirak joining us for a couple segments. Of course, we will go into the Pacers free agency signing with Kelly Oubre Jr., a little bit about Tyrese Haliburton, kind of where he's at in his, I guess you call it, injury rehab that he had over a year ago, that Achilles, and kind of get a feeling where he's at. And then, of course, we'll talk about some of the other big free agency things that happened this past week, as there were some big trades involved in that one as well. And then, of course, football season, we got Big 12 media days are tomorrow and Wednesday, and they're in Frisco, Texas. Of course, the ACC kicks off on the 15th through the 17th in Charlotte. SEC Media Days, the 20th of July through the 23rd. And then, of course, the Big Ten closes it out July 28th through the 30th in Chicago, with Indiana scheduled to be on July the 30th. So football season is here. It's amongst the biggest things in conversation, because we'll sure be talking about what are some of the things heading into the 2027 season that are going to be kind of the starting points of conversation. You got to start with the college football playoffs, of course, whether or not that will be expanding to 16 or 24 teams. December 1st is kind of their cutoff date to have something for the 2027. So there's a lot of things surrounding that will be of a big topic of discussion at all these media days, and usually ESPN tracks those pretty good. Of course, Big Ten Network will have, of course, great coverage as well for the Big Ten days. And then, of course, the boys over at the Hoosier.com will keep you up to date as well. And hope you all had a great 4th of July weekend. Great weather for the most part. Maybe dodged a thunderstorm here or there, but for the most part, great weather. But anyway, let's talk this soccer this morning. And, you know, the World Cup, I guess, has intrigued everybody since it's in the United States. I wouldn't say I'm a big soccer fan in that respect, but there's something about this Team USA that draws you to them when you watch them play. And then tonight they're going to play against Belgium, one of the tougher teams in the round of 16 at 8 p.m. And of course, there's controversy surrounding this tonight. And the United States, had beat Bosnia 2-0, and Belgium beat Senegal 3-2. And so these two will match up tonight. And yesterday, big storyline from it is Florian Balogun. I think I'm spelling that right. Balogun is going to be eligible to play tonight after the president, Trump, intervened in terms of reaching out to the FIFA president, who he has a relationship with, and asked that they reevaluate the red card that Balogun faced on, I think it was Friday night. And there was a lot of controversy around that. Now, they said they used Article 27 of their codes to rescind the red card, making him immediately eligible to continue on. And I guess they had done it with Ronaldo back in March, the same thing. But there's still a lot of controversy around it. Belgium, of course, isn't quite happy with that ruling, and you can understand why, because this cat can play. He leads them in scoring. So nothing better than a little controversy for Team USA. And the bigger picture of all this, the USA is trying to reach the quarterfinals for the first time since 2002. So this is a little bit of a measuring stick. And I guess you could say Team USA has captured the United States, but we'll get Greg Rakestraw's take on that up shortly. IndyCar, Mid-Ohio delivered again. Patrick O'Ward wins the Honda 200, his first win of the 2026 season. And Arrow McLaren goes 1-2 with O'Ward and Lundgaard finishing first and second. Huge weekend, for McLaren. But maybe even a bigger story was Scott Dixon. Chip Ganassi Racing was able to confirm that Dixon will not return after the 2026 season. And this is not just a simple, car driver moving on. This is about 24 full-time season that Dixon was with Ganassi Racing. And so that's kind of an end of the era. We'll get Greg's take on that as well, all here coming up shortly. And then, of course, again, with Dustin Dopirak, we'll get into the Pacers scenarios with Kelly Oubre Jr. signing $17 million deal to recap that. He's a guy that averaged about 14 points a game, 5 rebounds, played with Philly last year. Kind of adds depth to the wing. I think he can be either right or left. Does have athleticism, so he can move up and down the court. Defensively, versatility as well. And then again, Tyrese Haliburton with that Achilles that he's coming off from about a year ago. Where's he at? I know that he says that he's ready to go, which would be a huge boost to the Pacers lineup heading into the season. But we're in that period now where you got the different summer leagues ongoing. So we'll get into all of that with Dustin and see where the Pacers are at with that. Did they improve their team? Did it make them better in the Eastern Conference? And then if we have time, about some of the summer league stuff that's going on with that as well. And also, along with all the things that are heading around in the sports world, you cannot sit here and not talk about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's wedding this past weekend at Madison Square Garden. Approximately 1,000 people in attendance, of which the vast majority had to sign NDAs as well, including those that are in attendance and those that were working as staff. And I did see something today that Madison Square Garden ended up firing 1,000 of them because they broke the NDA. A lot of controversy. Who was on the list? Who wasn't on the list? Some of the Chiefs teammates that Kelsey has played with for many years in Kansas City. Some of them didn't make it to the wedding invitation. So there's been quite a bit of talk centered around that one. So again, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, making it official this past weekend, up in New York City at Madison Square Garden. So that fairy tale saga continues as we move forward through the 2026 years. But we'll get back to some sports here. But coming up here next, we got Greg Rakestraw joining us. And then I said later on, Dustin Dopirak. We got Team USA versus Belgium. We'll talk IndyCar, Scott Dixon, all of that here coming up right after these messages. And you're listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Indy Honda Bloomington has the deals for you, like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Indy Honda Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Indy Honda Bloomington's 2026 models, like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on The Zone by Indy Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today.
Zach Browning here to tell you about an offer you simply can't pass up. If you're looking for the best coverage of Indiana football and basketball, which includes recruiting, weekly chats, podcasts, as well as access to the best national team out there, then look no further than thehoosier.com. The best part, it's just $1 for the first week. Oh, and did I mention that you get a full year of access to The Athletic when you sign up? You can't beat the coverage, and you can't beat the deal. So head over to thehoosier.com today and sign up for just $1. It'll be the best decision you ever made.
Bored, Bloomington? Dave & Buster's can fix that. Eat and drink your way through our all-new menu. Play half-price games every Sunday through Thursday. Watch all your team's wins on a 40-foot screen and 30 HD TVs. And level all up with the high-flying human crane that puts you in the game. Private game suites, our exclusive arena, and more. Only at Dave & Buster's on 731 South College Mall Road.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, Monday edition. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. Thanks for joining us here today. Going to bring in Mr. Greg Rakestraw, who is always busy, but he always carves out time for Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Good day, sir. How are you?
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Hey, you just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And it's been a very eventful weekend in the world of sports. We're going to talk about 2 of them. You've got the IndyCar with the Mid-Ohio, but Scott Dixon's decision, which was kind of, I guess, would catch everyone kind of by surprise a little bit, I would say. But most importantly, tonight's USA versus Belgium, big time matchup again in Seattle. And Team USA gets huge news over the weekend, but not without a little controversy. What's your take on this whole thing with the red card then being rescinded with Article 27? I guess they had used it before back in the prelims in March with Ronaldo. And so is it a controversy? Is it not a controversy? I think it's a controversy because I'm going to let you finish that for me.
It is absolutely a controversy, even if this reverses what I thought was an unjust red card. But the fact that the last time in a World Cup that a red card decision was overturned was back in 1962 kind of tells you that it's a controversy. If I'm the U.S., I take the gift and I run with it. You put him back in the starting lineup. Clearly, he is your best option from a striker standpoint and has scored in all 3 of the games in which he has featured, knowing he did not play against Turkey in the game that, frankly, did not matter by that point for Team USA. And so how we got to this point, I'm not exactly sure. For those that are new to soccer, and so many folks that are watching this World Cup are, the World Cup and FIFA have been a bit different than, say, most other leagues in the world, where there is more of a stated and frankly used policy of potentially overturning a red card. All right. And so standard, when you get a red card at a match, you're done for that match and you will miss the next match. There are sometimes you'll hear the phrase violent conduct used and you'll get a 3-match suspension after a red card. But in virtually every major league in the world, and that counts for the leagues here in the United States, so Major League Soccer, the league that I'm a part of, the USL Championship, there is a disciplinary review committee, and sometimes those red cards get overturned. And basically it's like, hey, we you get off with time served. We can't go back and reinsert you in this match, but we can make sure you're not sitting for another match or 3 matches, whatever the case may be. That has rarely been used in FIFA, but frankly, the legal status of that was handed down yesterday. And so if I'm the U.S., you got a gift. Now go take advantage of it.
Yeah, correct. And again, the controversy or impartiality aspect of it all is because FIFA's president has been very, I guess you could say, buddies with the president of the United States. So he has a direct line to him. And there was a phone call made that asked for him to have this reviewed. And so they did it and they rescinded it. But again, it doesn't look good in the eyes of impartiality in that respect. But I found it pretty enlightening, I guess I should say. There are some out there that thinks the decision made was the correct one because of what you had talked about, the red card not being more or less a justifiable red card. And why should a team be penalized if it was a bad mistake, considering with everything that they've got going in the soccer world now with replay and the helmet, they're doing all types of stuff now.
Right.
So
from
your standpoint,
part of it too, Shannon, was the replay used properly?
Yeah. Right.
In other words, like you're supposed to be back and watching this at full speed, almost kind of giving yourself as an official more of a chance to, all right, I get a second closer look at this. And to be blunt, I thought it was probably a yellow card and not a red, just because there was a bit of a stumble there. And so it wasn't as if it was a reckless challenge. There was kind of a coming together of the two players, and that then led to Balogun stepping on the ankle of the Bosnian player.
Right.
And so like if you go back and you look at last night's England-Mexico match, where England had a player sent off in the second half because his studs were up and caught the player mid-shin, that's a very easy red card to make. Right. I'm sure there'll be a lot of folks in Great Britain today who are saying, well, where's the rescission of our red card? Is our guy going to get to play?
It's already started. It was a couple of quotes.
Right, it started immediately.
Right. Started immediately by their head coach.
Somebody get King Charles on the phone now.
Get Charles on the phone. And Right. Well, anyway, it's what makes this even more intriguing tonight with tonight's game versus Belgium, a very, very good team. The odds changed quite significantly after this decision. Is he that much of a difference in tonight's game against Belgium? I know he's leading them in scoring. I know he's a great player. There's also controversy on how he's even a U.S. able to play with the Team USA, because we went through this with all the Supreme Court stuff this week, but we'll leave that to people to research on their own. But I mean, is he that big of an aspect to this game tonight that he's definitely a difference maker?
He can be a difference maker. I thought they had a good chance to win without him. I think they have a better chance to win with him. Belgium is rated higher in the FIFA World Rankings currently, but it is a Belgium team that has some great names and some guys that are still capable of doing some really impressive things, like Kevin De Bruyne, like Romelu Lukaku. But those guys have been playing since the last time that the U.S. played them back in 2014. This is kind of a group that has gone from, and the phrase you hear in soccer is the golden generation. Well, we kind of think this is ours from a U.S. standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
At some point in time, you change from the golden generation to the golden girls. In other words, you hit the retirement age. And for the Belgian team, you're probably at about that point now. So I want to say that they're rated 9th, we're rated 15th. This is the first time we will have played someone that was rated above us. But I still think the advantage of being on home soil, I think, overrides that slight difference in terms of the FIFA World Rankings. So it's not going to be an easy one for the U.S. tonight, but it is one that I think they could have won without Balogun. I think it makes it more of a chance to win with Flo Balogun.
Yeah. And it's going to be very loud in Seattle because that is a kind of a big soccer town in some respects to what we've seen. But again, I said on last week, I felt that this Team USA team in some respects has got you thinking 1980 with the Miracle on Ice team in some respects. I know there's some different dynamics in place there, but the concept of the underdog and everything and some of the commercials they ran, the best one was about Don't You Believe in Miracles, where Michael Rizzoni sitting at the end of the bar, at a bar joint and making that comment. It was just, those are just some of the things that get you attracted to it. But tonight at 8, big time game with Belgium. And we're just going to have to see what all happens. Again, soccer is one of those games that ebbs and flows because of how long it is. And then plus you get that extra maybe 5 minutes, depending on how many stoppages are in between and estimated time. And against Bosnia, I think it was plus 10 minutes at the end of it all. So again, it's an interesting dynamic tonight with this controversy. So like you said, you can't, it doesn't mean anything if you don't do something with it, because at the end of the day, it's about winning. Let's switch to IndyCar because, had the Mid-Ohio race over in as a Cleveland area, I guess you could say. And really, I think McLaren did a pretty good job this past weekend. So Pato O'Ward he won it, I believe, if I'm making that. Oh, there we go.
Correct.
I had my graphic here. You got 2 Arrow McLaren wins, finish 1-2. Okay. Some big names up front there, but I think IndyCar this year, for whatever reason, their races have been more dynamic, exciting. I mean, you could, whatever adjective you want to use with it. And again, even in this one with the 2 teammates going at it for the better part of this race, it ended up being a really good race. It
was. It was a caution-free race, which we had a bunch of those early last year, and sometimes those can be snoozers. This one I don't think was, because of the variety of fuel strategy in which you had, and frankly, because you had maybe some different kind of pieces to the puzzle. The fact that Rinus VeeKay is having another really good year for kind of what would be a secondary team. Last year it was Dale Coyne. This year it's the Juncos Hollander guys, because he finished just off the podium. That got your attention. Knowing that O'Ward had not had a podium all year, after really, you would say behind Palou, he's probably been the second best driver for the last 3 or 4 years in the IndyCar series, even though I think it was Kirkwood that technically finished second last year, and he was, in the mix yesterday as well. It was also seemingly a race where we talked the least about Alex Palou that we have in quite some time. There's also something to being getting the gift of the World Cup, that you're on the same television provider as the World Cup, which frankly is why there's more of a gap in the schedule this time.
Right.
IndyCar won't run until after the World Cup final coming up in a couple of weeks, and then after that they just take a couple of weeks off, and then it is a 6-race and 5-weekend sprint to finish the season by Labor Day weekend to then get out of the way of the National Football League. But I would assume that leading into Brazil, Norway, and then leading into, Mexico, England, that the number would be off the chart from a viewership standpoint yesterday. And it was for the race, 2 weeks earlier in terms of Road America. So, Palou continues to lead the series. Palou is having a normal person's good year compared to an otherworldly good year that he had last year. but he still carries a 56-point lead to the next race, the Oval in Nashville. And again, in theory, if there is a racetrack where maybe you can gain some points, it would be on a more of an oval track against Palou than saying, a road course or a street course. But now we can get to the other part where Arrow McLaren made news this week, if you would like to.
Well, again, the biggest one, that was one of them with Chip Ganassi. The other one was Lundgaard, right? Wasn't he the one that that they made a decision to move on from as well?
Potentially. And let me explain to you why there's a bit of an out there, okay? So Arrow McLaren is going to bring back Felix Rosenqvist, who has been with Meyer Shank Racing and obviously won this year's 500. But kind of the first domino to fall in the last couple of weeks, and this may have been leading into Road America, was basically Meyer Shank confirming, hey, listen, Felix is not going to be back next year. That, after his couple of years with the team, maybe it's 3 years at this point, he was moving on. Then obviously the haymaker was the fact that Scott Dixon, who has been with Chip Ganassi for the entirety of his IndyCar days, he was with a team called Pac West when he first broke in the Champ Car days, right around 2000, 2001. But he has been with Ganassi Racing for the last quarter century.
Yeah, 24 full seasons.
Correct.
Six championships, too. That he's
correct. And so the fact that he's going to make the move to Arrow McLaren catches your attention. Now, what I would say is that I think his move to Arrow McLaren is also similar to Tony Kanaan being at Arrow McLaren, similar to Ryan Hunter-Reay being at Arrow McLaren. I think it is a nod as to what comes after racing as much as it is about racing. And I'm working off the reports of others here, but basically the genesis of this was Ryan Hunter-Reay driving the Indy 500 car for Arrow McLaren this year. He had the Indy 500 only seat. And he said that they were basically behind technically, that was a tough drive because they did not have kind of the engineering knowledge in terms of drivers in cockpits to really know how to shake down race cars, fix race cars, et cetera. And that's part of, I think, the role that Scott Dixon is going to play. I think he's a full-time driver for a year, maybe two at most, before he moves into more of an advisory role. I think there's some other things he can be a part of at McLaren, whether it's Le Mans, whether it's not driving a Formula One car, but being involved in the Formula One operation. I think that's the reason he went back there. I think for Rosenqvist, I think it's clearly he and Pato O'Ward are tight. Those guys are very close. Those guys are former teammates. I think it was one to put those guys back together. I think Dixon is almost a temporary stopgap for them, which is why it would not stun me if Christian Lundgaard is kept around on an Arrow McLaren deal, and maybe even kind of like, for those who don't know, Dennis Hauger is actually on an Andretti deal, but it's kind of being farmed out to Dale Coyne Racing this year. It would not stun me if Arrow McLaren does something similar. Basically has Lundgaard under contract, almost with the idea of, hey, we're going to put you in another car maybe for a year, or we're going to bring you back after a year or two, because I'm not sure Dixon is a long-term fit given how long he's been in the series at this point.
Well, there seems to be a little bit of everything happening in IndyCar right now because it's that crazy. They call it the crazy season, and there's a reason for it. It happens before the season's even over. Yep. But that's just the way things operate there. So, I mean, but again, I've never been a big fan of road courses. For me, it's just the aspect I think you hit on it earlier, more strategy than anything when you're on a road course, but it's also very comparable to what you get in Formula One and everything. So, but that race, because there was a non-stopper for the most part, I found it to be better than like you said, getting the snoozers where you're having a caution every few minutes because somebody can't make a corner turn or gets plowed into the gravel. So such. One thing before we let you go here, you're still with Indy 11, correct? Are you still doing that?
Absolutely. Had a match on Saturday. In fact, we had our best win of the season, beating the Charleston Battery 2-0, and Charleston, one of the better teams in our league year in, year out. So absolutely.
Yeah, I figured you were still with them because I hadn't seen anything, but I wanted to check with you because, we talked about soccer, its grip on, the country for the last few years. It's becoming bigger and bigger, bigger. But right here in Indiana, you got the Indy 11, you got Fort Wayne up here that's going to brand new stadium right off Interstate 69. It's a phenomenal stadium. They're just really finishing it up. I mean, we were able to start the season in it, but wasn't quite there yet in terms of what they've got. But do you see this sport really growing in just the state of Indiana because of these, I guess you'd call them AA type of leagues or so? Maybe
so basically, if you
AAA.
wanted to use the minor league analogy, the Indy 11 would be the AAA equivalent and Fort Wayne would be the AA equivalent.
Right.
With Major League Soccer being Major League Baseball. And that is, to me, the healthiest sign that soccer has is that we have 4 fully functioning professional leagues on the men's side, and we have 2 on the women's side. And that is so different than what the landscape was 32 years ago when the World Cup was here the last time. Because that was kind of the genesis of all of this, of the modern sport of soccer. But when Indy 11 and Fort Wayne played, they're in different leagues, but there is a competition called the Prince Tires USL Cup that kind of puts teams together. The 2 teams played on May 16th. Again, about a half-full stadium in Fort Wayne because of construction delays and things like that. That was the first time that ever 2 fully professional teams from Indiana played each other. It kind of put that in perspective. So it is so much easier for an average fan to now see something on World Cup and go, hey, I want to go watch the closest, top level soccer in my area. For 90+% of Americans, there's probably a professional soccer team within 2 to 3 hours of them.
Right.
If not closer than that. So, I'll be curious to see what the bump is like for us, because let me give you the Indy 11 example. 2014 was our first year. That was kind of the last great summer World Cup run for the U.S., and that was done in the round of 16. Well, we were first year, so everything was new for us, and we were selling out basically every match. In 18, we miss the World Cup. In 22, the World Cup played in Qatar is basically played between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Well, our season was long done by that point in time. So our next home match in Indiana is not going to be, or Indianapolis, not going to be until July 25th, until the week after the World Cup. So I am very curious as to what our crowd looks like on that Saturday night and see exactly what that World Cup bounce just might look like here in Indianapolis.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, I'm with you. I think that, it's evident that soccer is a very popular sport in the Americas, but more importantly, it's become a very popular sport here in the state of Indiana, like you said, with the professional, teams that are involved in it. Nobody would invest in a professional team unless they thought it was a good thing. I mean, that's the bottom line. But again, it does take time. And hey, they're in 2 great markets when you think of minor league sports. Indianapolis and Fort Wayne have always kind of taken to the minor league sports, AAA, AA, however you want to look at it, outside of the NFL. They've always supported minor league sports. So I think it's a good thing. So, well, hey, buddy, I appreciate you being with me. I know you got to get running here on a busy Monday, but appreciate it. And hey, we'll catch you down the line again.
Thanks, Drew. Appreciate you.
You too, buddy. Greg Rakestraw. I call him the man with many voices because he's with a lot of different organizations when it comes to sportscasting. Very good at what he does. A lot of respect for him and what he has done throughout the state, especially with high school football and high school athletics in general. Just a great lover of sports. So when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more here before we get Dustin Dopirak in to talk about the NBA more importantly. We'll also talk about some recruiting aspect with Indiana football. Has Monshawn Sales made a commitment to a date yet? We'll talk about more and all of that here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
The ISC Sports Network is your home for sports content across the Hoosier State. Find us live on TV and streaming or archived on our website and our app. The ISC is your one-stop shop for the content you want to see, including high school sports, college sports, and other great events throughout the year. Subscribe to our streaming service and get access to it all. ISC. Local lives here.
If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington has the deals for you, like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Andy Moore Honda Bloomington's 2026 models, like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on The Zone by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Dave & Buster's Bloomington is the place to eat, drink, play, and watch. Enjoy half-price games every Sunday through Thursday, a new menu to dig into, and next-level upgrades like private game suites, the high-flying human crane that puts you in the game, our exclusive arena, and more. Only at Dave & Buster's Bloomington, 731 South College Mall Road.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on a Monday. We appreciate you joining us wherever you may be as we head into the talking season, as they would say it. And that is all the different football media days that are on the docket in the month of July. And you can see the numbers of them there, starting off with the Big 12 coming up tomorrow down there in Frisco, Texas. I guess there would be a lot of discussion centered around there with, of course, the Sorsby situation and how the Big 12 handled it as a league. I'm sure that Texas Tech will have some, I guess you would call some very maybe difficult questions to answer when it comes to that, but that will be a big topic of discussion there. Of course, there will always be the topic of discussion when it involves the college football playoffs. And the Big 12 is one that is behind the Big Ten's proposal to go to 24 teams. And you could understand why. The Big 12 has always felt they are underrepresented in the college football playoffs. But it's one of those things that when you look at the schedules and who they play and such, it's just the Big 12, I'm not quite sure, has enough strong teams compared to what the Big Ten and SEC have. But again, the potential to have some of these crossover games in the future would look good because that would benefit the Big 12. And of course, the power of having 24 teams in that playoffs would definitely help them. Again, they have to have a decision as it pertains to 2027 and by December 1st. Otherwise, they remain the same at 12 teams like this year. So it'll be interesting to see who they vote as the potential first-ranked team in the Big 12. I got to feel that Texas Tech, even though they lost Sorsby, they got a pretty good ball club coming back as a whole. And I'm sure they will probably get a lot of the votes for the preseason #1 team in the Big 12. But again, the Big 12, I think, has got a lot of intriguing teams in it. The expansion has helped them. There's been some teams that have kind of come out of nowhere and been a representative of the Big 12. So that will be interesting to see there when they start tomorrow. Of course, the ACC comes the July 15th. I'm sure Dabo will have some things to talk about. I think one of the biggest things that will be on the ledger, so to speak, would be tampering, because Dabo was one that brought their tampering issue to light with Ole Miss on a player that was there on campus and then left to go to Ole Miss. But I'm sure he will have a very, a very comment or two about that situation and kind of what will all transpire in the ACC this year. It's going to be another interesting dynamic. You got to feel like Miami's the team there with what they've got coming back. Pretty good ball club. There's a really great ball club that Indiana beat in the national championship game. Tons of talent. And you got to feel this year in the ACC, they got to be the pick for the number one spot there overall. Of course, the interesting big media day this year, again, will be the SEC, July 20th through the 23rd. I'm sure one big question that will be asked of maybe every SEC coach is, has the Big Ten overtaken the SEC as the most dominant conference in in college football? And I know it pains some of them to say it, but if you look just based on national championships over the last couple of seasons, you've got to say, and who's been in the national championship game, that the SEC has come up short, and the Big Ten has been the conference that's come away with all the different hardware. So again, that will be a big, I bet, topic of conversation there at the SEC. You got to watch it just for the fact that Lane Kiffin will always say something that borders on the line of outrageous, I guess you could say, and his way of handling questions or making little jabs at certain leagues or coaches or whoever it may be. And then, of course, Sark down at Texas, who's had a ongoing feud to a degree with Texas Tech, about Texas Tech wanting to play Texas and so forth and so on. But again, SEC Day should be really interesting again this year. I'm sure Greg Stanke will have a lot of comments that will fire up other conferences, of course. And of course, the other big question there is the SEC wants to go to 16 teams and they do not want to go to 24. So right now, the hindering aspect of it is the SEC and Big Ten are not in agreement with that. And then finally, the Big Ten Media Days, 20th through the 30th up in Chicago. Big Ten Network will have wall-to-wall coverage, as will the Hoosier.com. Again, Indiana taking up Carter Smith and Isaiah Jones. And then Tyrese Tucker will be in tow up there to the Big Ten Media Days. It'll be an interesting dynamic. Does Indiana get the nod as the number one team preseason in the Big Ten? Or does teams like Ohio State, because of who they've got returning and the perception out there, I guess you could say still, are they going to get that? But it's going to be a very interesting Big Ten Media Day, even for Sig, because, first year he was picked second to last. He made his comment about that. Moved up a little bit last year. I don't think he was too happy with that. And so all he's done in 2 years is go out and win a national championship and Big Ten championship. So it'll be interesting to see the writers of the Big Ten, how they handle Indiana there in Chicago. And I believe Indiana is with Maryland, Michigan, Nebraska, Northwestern, and Washington on their day at the Big Ten Media Days. So Michigan new head coach. You also got everything that's going on there with the Big Ten wanting to go to 24 all that is going to be interesting. And again, the Big Ten stretches from East Coast to West Coast. I mean, that's still pretty big footprint for the Big Ten. And again, I think overall, how will Indiana handle all the expectations today, and how that all plays out with others in the conference in that respect. But again, it's going to be a fun-filled month of July for the talking days. And as Sid will say, the talking is over. It's time to go prove it. And Indiana did just that last year, proving it. I did allude to Monchon Sales and recruiting. I want to get to that again here before we get Dustin Dopirak in here. But again, from my understanding and a couple things is that they are still in his agencies discussing what is on the table, especially from Indiana and Texas, to have a conversation and discussion about that. So his agency has been in contact with both schools to finalize what each school is going to put down for his services. For Indiana, I'm sure they'll go all in. Now, whether or not they have the money or the resources to top of Texas will be determined. But from every indication that I've seen and heard, that Indiana is in a very strong position. And right now, with agents and agencies involved, they're going through a diligent process to make sure that everybody's on the same page and a decision can be made probably here within the next week. I'm going to guess within the next week, a decision will be made on where he will go and continue his playing career, because he wants to get this behind him so he can go focus on his senior season and everybody can move on. I do think Indiana's done recruiting. They'll take, of course, Mr. Sales' commitment, but I do believe for the better part of this 27 class, this is about what they're probably going to take. Now, does that mean they may not take another kid later? No, they can still do that. But I do think for the most part, I think they feel that they're done with everything as it pertains to recruiting this 27 class, and they'll be able to go on with everything there to get them started off the right foot when it comes to game day visits and such, because they'll have a big game day visit on that first week. But again, I don't necessarily think that Stig's going to get into a bidding war with Texas. I do think, he's going to put down that they can develop him just as good as anybody in the country right at Indiana. And he's going to have a great chance to come in and be in the rotation if he proves he's ready to go play Big Ten football. Texas's shot to them is having already the number 2 ranked receiving kid already in tow, and they want the top 2 receivers at Texas. So again, it's a big battle, but look, Indiana has beaten other teams for other kids that they've got coming in, especially the 4-star kids. They've beaten the likes of Ohio State. They've beaten the likes of Florida. I can go on and on. So this year they have won some big recruiting battles for some top talent. And this would be just icing on the cake for Monchon Sales to come to Indiana. Now, again, I do think it's going to happen within the week. And I do like where Indiana's sitting, especially when you hear the rivals group talk very positive about it. And I do think there's a possibility that the Brewster kid still may be a possibility. We'll find out with all that. But we're up against another break. After the break, we're going to come back with Dustin Dopirak from the Indianapolis Star, talking all things Pacers, free agency, looking ahead, and all those things and more right here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Andy Moore Honda Bloomington has the deals for you, like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Andy Moore Honda Bloomington's 2026 models, like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on The Zone by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today.
Zach Browning here to tell you about an offer you simply can't pass up. If you're looking for the best coverage of Indiana football and basketball, which includes recruiting, weekly chats, podcasts, as well as access to the best national team out there, then look no further than thehoosier.com. The best part, it's just $1 for the first week. Oh, and did I mention that you get a full year of access to The Athletic when you sign up? You can't beat the coverage, and you can't beat the deal. So head over to thehoosier.com today and sign up for just $1. It'll be the best decision you ever made.
Bored, Bloomington? Dave & Buster's can fix that. Eat and drink your way through our all-new menu. Play half-price games every Sunday through Thursday. Watch all your team's wins on a 40-foot screen and 30 HD TVs. And level all up with the high-flying human crane that puts you in the game. Private game suites, our exclusive arena, and more. Only at Dave & Buster's on 731 South College Mall Road.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. We're just waiting for Dustin to join us here in a second. Again, I hope that each and every one of you had a great 4th of July weekend with family and friends. It is always a big day for grilling out, and I'm sure each and every one of you had that opportunity. And a little bit maybe of homemade ice cream. That's even better on 4th of July, is making some homemade ice cream. So I was fortunate. We did some homemade ice cream, and it was quite delicious. And so had a good 4th of July here at the Griffith household. Again, with some of these media days, one thing I did not mention, and I should have, especially in the SEC, the one big question is going to be centered around Arch Manning. Is he ready to really live up to the expectations that not only himself and Texas have probably set for him, but even in the public sphere? Because if you look at it, he came in there as a golden boy and didn't quite get off to the greatest start in that respect. So you got to feel that that's going to be a very interesting discussion as well there at Texas. Of course, I'm sure Sig will be asked, about Indiana's quarterback situation and why Josh Hoover is not at media days. But I'm sure that will be a conversation of discussion amongst most there at the Big Ten media days. And some of the top talent in the Big Ten, of course, is always going to be on the docket. Of course, Julian Sayin at Ohio State, Jeremiah Smith, probably one of the top receiver in the country. The kid's just a beast on the outside and can get it done. Of course, then you've got the new coaches that are in the Big Ten with Kyle Whittingham up in Michigan, Pat Fitzgerald at Michigan State. Those two, being that they're in-state rivals, both kind of have the same, I guess you'd call it, brand of football they like to play, which is tough defense and being able to physically dominate an opponent on offense. So that'll be some great conversations there. Fitz of course, back in college football after setting out or being fired at Northwestern for allegedly not having control of his team, that there was some inside hazing being done, I guess, and it ultimately cost Pat his job. But he's able to get back up and be the head coach at Michigan State. You know, other big coaching names, and the Chip Kelly's back in the Big Ten. Led Ohio State to the national championship as their OC. Now he's at Northwestern. And I got to feel that that's going to help Northwestern in a lot of ways, especially with what Chip likes to do and run. So it's, again, going to be a very big day in college football coming up this week, and of course through the months of July. So it's going to be something that you're going to want to keep it here. Indiana Sports Beat Radio is where we'll update you, especially on when Indiana is at Chicago. I'm sure we'll have some good coverage there. You got Hoosier.com. Of course, I'm sure that Jim is planning to go, but I don't know if he's going to be able to go at that time or not. But, again, it's going to be a great time of year, as it always is, because it sets the stage for the season and the start of training camp, per se, because right after that Big Ten Media Day, they'll be jumping right into fall camp. And it's going to be a great, exciting year in Bloomington. We've talked about it, I guess you could say ad nauseum, is how Indiana will ultimately handle not only being the defending Big Ten champions, but also the defending national champions. And now being a team that's no longer going to sneak up on anybody, but will have everybody's best game because they will want to beat the defending national champion. And of course, knock Indiana down a couple pegs, because for the better part of 2 seasons, Coach Sig and the Indiana Hoosiers have dominated the press coverage, not only in the Midwest, but throughout the country. And so I'm guarantee you there's a little bit of animosity out there, especially amongst the Blue Bloods, that has seen Indiana rise from the ashes and ultimately capture the big prize of winning the national championship. That did not set too well, I would assume, with some of the Blue Bloods throughout the country. And again, different type of year ahead for the Hoosiers. Well, it's one of those years where, again, new faces, but some returning faces that they're going to have back on offense and defense. You got to feel the defense is going to be a complete reload. I look for them to be as good as, if not better than, a year ago. So that will be the other big thing. And then, of course, right now at thehoosier.com, you can be up to date on everything with Indiana basketball. They've gotten some, I guess, some not commitments, but some visits set up with some big 5-star recruits, I'm thinking, because I saw something the other day where they've had some good recruiting efforts take shape with that. And the fact that they got their summer trip ahead of them here in a few weeks. Hey, we're going to bring on Dustin Dopirak back into the.
Sorry about that, Griff.
That's all right. Into the Lion's Den.
Yeah.
I just got to ramble a little bit. I'm going to have to come back in, but how was your 4th?
Good. Got to go home, see family, all that kind of stuff. So, no, that was nice.
Where's home for you?
My family puts a big one on every year.
Where's home for you?
Pittsburgh area, about North Huntington, about a half hour east. It's like a Westmoreland County.
Biggest name in Pittsburgh is Signetti.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yep.
I believe his brother is now with the Steelers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they recently hired him. Yeah, so
Yeah.
the Signettis, yes, they have a lot of pull out there, and he's been all over the place. Mike Shanahan, the offensive coordinator, went to my high school.
Yeah,
so
that's right. He's a Pittsburgh kid. That's right.
He's a Pittsburgh kid. He played at Pitt. Went to we don't have a whole lot of big athletes come out of Northern High School. So I remember when Mike was there. Mike's younger than me. He wasn't there when I was in school. I think he got there. I want to say he was in high school like 2006, 2005, somewhere in that range. But I remember him being a deal. I was out of college and stuff like that. And when anybody from your high school does something, you're like, okay, what's this? I started to see him on the lists, like recruiting lists and stuff. And I'm like, okay, who's Mike Shanahan? And so he's a really good basketball player and a really good football player. And so saw him, played at Pitt, and then got, obviously followed Signetti, got in with them, and certainly it's been a great deal for him. But
because
they have connections to my home. So.
Right. The big thing for him too was he kind of broke the family tradition, I guess you could say, because he had father and uncles go on to play college basketball, and that was kind of being the segue for him. But he chose a different route. Paid off for him, I guess you could say.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, certainly he was a guy that had really good high school basketball player and or small college basketball player height. And he was, but he's 6'5", he was, that's a, big college football tight end, and certainly he was really good, had the size really for that to be a Big Ten caliber player. So, I mean, he was really good at both. I mean, he was really good in both sports, but it's just, when you're 6'5" and a forward, that'll get you somewhere, but it won't get you to Pitt, but playing tight end at 6'5", that'll get you to Pitt.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's talk some Indiana Pacers here. We'll talk Indiana Pacers for the first segment, and then we'll broaden out to the NBA there in the second, because there's a lot of things actively going on outside, the free agency period and some signings and trades there. And then, of course, you got the G League Summer Leagues in full swing. So there's a lot of things happening, even though the NBA is still a few weeks away from even getting started when you look at it. So it's amazing how much now, especially a sport like basketball, year round, there's always something going on outside of the regular playing season. Doesn't matter, NBA, college, high school,
international ball.
International ball. There's just a lot going on. But Pacers did sign Oubre Jr. 2-year deal, $17 million. What was your take on that signing first? And how kind of does he fit within the frameworks of this Pacer team?
Yeah, no, I mean, what impressed me about it, I guess, was that it was basically the biggest swing that they could take, because their financial situation coming was kind of funky. That just, it's not really their financial situation; it was their financial situation in relationship to the way the CBA works. And you can kind of get stuck in some pockets in it. If you're over the second apron or whatever, so they were in a spot, and I know this stuff gets complicated, and I was talking about this on Twitter, and people are like, man, what are you talking about? But they were kind of like in between levels. And the thing about the Pacers is, I mean, they've very rarely paid the luxury tax. So there's the salary cap, there's a salary cap threshold. They're way, way, way above that. There's the luxury tax threshold in terms of how much you can make. And then there's these additional kind of layers that when you get above them, there's sort of either penalties or restrictions in terms of how you operate. And so they were going into free agency, they were right up against the luxury tax. It was basically like if they added anybody, they were going to be in the tax. And what they had access to in terms of how you can sign free agents when you're above the cap was basically you can sign somebody with what's called the mid-level exception. So if you sign somebody, you can sign somebody for up to $6.1 million, and that counts as the taxpayer mid-level exception. If you use that exception, you're hard capped at the second apron, which is a much bigger number. But if you use what they call the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, so if you use that exception for more than $6 million, basically on a player or players, then you are hard capped. It's what's called the first apron. So basically, it's like for this, for this thing, their salary can only be $209 million. If you use this non-taxpayer mid-level exception, you can't go above $209 million all year. So they were like right at about $200 million going into this. They saved a little money on the Braden Smith deal because they trade Cam Jones. They get another $2 million to the cap because they got Braden to be on a two-way contract. So that got them an extra $2 million. And so it's like this is the type of margin they're in. And so Oubre, Oubre's on 2-year deal, $17 million. I don't know what his first year thing is going to be, but I mean, it's got to be 7 or 8, somewhere 7 or 8, somewhere in that vicinity. Right. So basically they signed this guy. I thought he was going to be more expensive. Like him and Quentin Grimes from Philadelphia were both free agents. Quentin got a 4-year deal worth $60 million. I thought Oubre was going to be over 10. And I thought he was going to be a guy they weren't going to be able to get. They managed to fit him in this. And so they've got 14 players. They've got a contract available that I don't think they can use, basically. I think they're only like 1.6 or 2 million under the first apron, and they are hard capped. So basically they decided, all right, like it's worth it to have this kind of restriction to get this player. We think this guy really fits, with us and what we want to do. And it's worth it to be down a man going into this and operate this whole year in this really tight margin of what can happen. Because, last year they had to sign a whole bunch of guys on non-guaranteed contracts because of all these injuries. If they were to have a similar situation, they wouldn't have nearly as much flexibility to pick people up during the year. So they're in a tight spot, but this is them saying, you know what, like this is the best guy that we can find that really fits with what we want to do. And so it's worth it to be in this tight spot. So that was my thought. I was like, wow, okay, like this is the biggest swing that they could take. I didn't think they'd be able to fit him in. But as far as like him as a player, really like he also is one of the type of guys that they've wanted to get more of. And it's kind of, you can never have too many long arm wings in this game who can, handle and shoot, shoot and defend 3-and-D wings. Oubre's not a great shooter. But he shot 36% this past year. Like he hits a lot of them. He also takes a lot of them. So he misses a lot of them. But, he can hit him. He is a guy that is dangerous from 3, but can also just really goes hard to the rim, really physical player, really athletic player, gets up and really dunks it. But like also is really capable of turning, creating steals. I think he's averaged over a steal per game for like 7-8 years in a row, and it's just really good at it harassing guys, that kind of stuff. He can defend multiple positions, measured 7, I think, and he's been in the league for like 8-10 years, but he measured 7'2.5" wingspan when he was there. It's like 6'8", but with like a 7'2" wingspan. That's plus a lot, that's a significant gap between your general that's a significant gap between like your height and your wingspan. That's a lot. So yeah, he's like that's a really big get for them. I don't know, I think he can. I think Aaron Nesmith is still your starting small forward, but Oubre can challenge for that position, I think, and I think he can play any position 2 to 4 on the second unit if you need him. Whatever that works. He's been the 3 in most places he's been. Certainly with Philadelphia, that's where he fit in last year with George at the 4, Edgecombe at the 2, Maxey at the 1, and Embiid at the 5. When Philly was full strength, Oubre was their starting 3-man with that group. So I think he fits in a lot of places. He's a natural 3, but a natural 3 can move a couple other spots. I think he allows you to be really big in the second unit if that's where he is. You can go, Oubre 2, Walker 3, top and 4. And so you're, 6'8", 6'7", 6'8", or 6'9", 2 to 4, and that's really, really good for a second unit. And you throw Huff and Potter in there, so you got a lot of size, and you still got McConnell obviously running the point. But that's great. And you have a guy, McConnell is going to be able to push pace. And when those guys get out and run, if they get, if that group should be able to rebound, should be able to stop spots. And those guys should really be able to get out and push it. If you got that whole group together, and they should be able to turn defense into offense really, really fast. And that could make them, a tough group to deal with if that group is really clicking. That adds a lot to their depth. So I know they're ecstatic to have this side that fits in.
Again, kind of getting up against another break here quickly, but I guess when you look at this signing, and this first thing I thought the same thing with you. He gives you some flexibility. He's very versatile in what he can and can't do. He's aggressive on the defensive side of it, which again, the NBA, that's been one of the knocks against the Pacers, has always been their defense, and being stout in that. He brings that edge, like you had pointed out. But was this the type of signing that gives you hope that Indiana still feels like they're a top contender in the Eastern Conference, or was this more about stabilization of the roster?
I mean, it's a swing because, I definitely look at it as this is them saying, we're a title contender. I think what made it a little bit more difficult for them going into this was they decided that they really still have faith in a lot of the other guys. As of the lottery, I would have thought, okay, maybe they move somebody like Jarris Walker, and like maybe their big swing is to move some, after they missed out on the lottery. So if they would have got a top 4 pick, then you're like, okay, they're really, really golden. Because they bring all these 7 guys back, and they're gonna get DeMonster or Peterson or Wilson or Boozer, and man, they're really gonna step take it up a notch here. But once they were like, okay, you're out of the lottery, what are you going to do? And so I spent some time, I got to talk to, and have kind of an extensive off the record conversation with Ted Wu, during the lottery. Cause basically I got to watch the lottery happen, and then the lottery happens about an hour before it goes on TV. When you actually, the results go on TV, you actually see the ping pong balls, and you're stuck in there. You can't leave, you can't leave there, and everything is, all the conversations are off the record and stuff like that. But you can't report anything. You're not allowed to have your phone on you. You're not allowed to have your computer on you, nothing digital, nothing recording. So you're just kind of there, to sit around and spend time. And I kind of got a sense of, okay, what do you guys want to do? And we basically explained the situation to me in terms of where they were. It's like, okay, well, if we wanted to use this exception, we're hard capped. You remember, it's like, oh, right, you're hard capped. And so it's like, all right, that you have this tight window. So, but I'm looking, you look at the numbers and you're like, oh, right, the most you can spend on non-taxpayer mid-level is $15.1 million a year. But you have to have that much space under the first apron to do that. And the way to get there would have been to get rid of Jarris Walker, or Ben Shepherd. That would have got you at least closer to being able to offer the full mid-level in free agency. And so you're like, all right, well, if they're going to do that, that allows them to make a bigger swing. And then basically you started to figure out, okay, they're not going to move Walker. They actually like him. They really like him a lot, and they believe he can develop because, it's taken a while from him. He didn't get a whole lot of playing time as a rookie, a little bit more second year. And even this year, early part of the season, he wasn't developing the way that you would hope given the playing time he was getting because everyone else was hurt. He was one of the few guys that didn't have a major injury, this year that at least cost him a bunch of games. He had a late one, where he missed maybe 3 or 4, but he still played 75 games, something like that, on a team where I think he was only one of 3 guys that cracked 65. So he, that would have been an opening. He's a guy that's due for an extension. If they would have been able to salary dump him to somebody for picks and get a trade exception out of it, then they would have been able to really take a bigger swing. And it's like, well, but started to hear, okay, well, he's going to stick around. They really like him. They like his development. And you're like, okay, well, they're really limited here. What can you do? But it's it is also them saying we have 8 guys we really like, and we believe in this team as a championship contender. We're going to try to do something to add depth, but we want to keep this core together. And so if you're going to keep all that core together, this was putting all your eggs in the move in one basket. There's a good chance they don't sign anybody else. There's a good chance this is it. But that is a little bit, that's the most chips in the middle move you can do, is to say, we're not even going to take 2 guys. We believe in this guy that much, and we think it's worth it to just get 1 guy when we have an option for 2. And that we think that this really dials it up for us. He's a starting caliber player. I was going to say quality,
right?
That you can be in your second unit, and when you've already got Toppin and McConnell there, who are really high level, and if Walker turns into what they believe he could, then that's a really good group of bench guys. And they believe in that starting 5 because they think, okay, well, it's you sub out Zubac for Turner, that they think, Zubac is a really great player. It changes the way that you're going to play. But they really believe in that starting 5. And so this second unit really punches it up. And again, Oubre can Oubre can push Neesmith. I think Neesmith ends up winning it. He certainly has the benefit of having been there. He's earned his stripes. He's won playoff games. Certainly was the guy who drove that comeback against the Knicks in Game 1 in the Eastern Conference Finals. Done some really huge things. So Aaron gets all that advantage. But Oubre's super talented. He's won a lot of games. He's that did a lot of good work for Philly. And they really do look at this as like they didn't have a lot of chips to push in the middle. They hadn't already pushed. They're invested for $200 million, in this team. So it's not like they didn't already have chips in the middle. But it was like what was left, in your stack that wasn't in the middle already is in. And so I think they view this as like this is the biggest all-in move that they could make.
Well, hey, we're up against the break here, but when we come back, I want to talk a little bit where Tyrese Haliburton is kind of in, with his situation, as well as some other trades that were made in the NBA. We'll find out more about that here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this message.
The ISC Sports Network is your home for sports content across the Hoosier State. Find us live on TV and streaming or archived on our website and our app. The ISC is your one-stop shop for the content you want to see, including high school sports, college sports, and other great events throughout the year. Subscribe to our streaming service and get access to it all. ISC. Local lives here.
If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington has the deals for you, like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Andy Moore Honda Bloomington's 2026 models, like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on The Zone by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Dave & Buster's Bloomington is the place to eat, drink, play, and watch. Enjoy half-price games every Sunday through Thursday, a new menu to dig into, and next-level upgrades like private game suites, the high-flying human crane that puts you in the game, our exclusive arena, and more. Only at Dave & Buster's Bloomington, 731 South College Mall Road.
Welcome back here to Indiana Sports Beat Radio on a great Monday. Sitting with Dustin Dopirak out of the Indy Star. And before we move on, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We appreciate you doing that as well. And appreciate those that are listening elsewhere today. Before we took a break there's one I did want to hit on Tyrese Haliburton, because he's coming off a very significant injury. He missed the entire year. And I know he feels like he's back into form. Where do you see him at right now? Do you feel like the Pacers think that he's ready to roll come the season, or is he still going to need some time?
So there are two answers to that question at the same time. So we got to see him at his camp. He does a camp every year. Every year in Indiana, he's been doing it in Carmel because he lives up that way. And so this was not this past weekend, but last weekend. So he looks dramatically better than he did in April. I mean, obviously he was dealing with shingles toward the end of the year, and in April he was miserable. I mean, I could imagine. It was brutal. I mean, because it started in February, right after he went on vacation for the All-Star break. Basically, obviously he wasn't playing. So I think, Carlisle really told the guys, given how miserable of a season it was, just like, all of you get out of here. All of you go take a vacation. I think in Haliburton's case in particular, it was like, you get out of here. You come back when you want, basically like go take your time, go enjoy yourself. And Haliburton comes back, I think maybe I think he was supposed to meet them in DC for the first couple games. And he comes back and he's like it just, feels just terrible. And he goes and gets checked out and everything and finds out that he's got, that he's got shingles. And so like he told us just how bad it was. I mean, he had like just this big thing, like I guess it was above his right eye. Yeah. So it was like right here. And that's dangerous. It's dangerous. It was brutal. I mean, he told us in April he had to wear glasses just to keep himself from scratching his eye all the time. Like he was scratching it so much he lost most of his eyebrow. And like, I mean, it's nerve pain, and it's just feeling terrible. And he was on medication, and he looked, like he got made fun of a lot on Twitter because, when he came out and was doing warm-ups, like he looked a lot bigger. And he explained it to us. He was like, well, the medication I'm on makes me gain a lot of weight. Like I'm more out of shape than I have ever been in my life. Like this. Because I mean, Haliburton's been a skinny kid his whole life, like always been, real thin, was like 175. He was 6'5", 175 when he went to college. Right. I mean, like, so this is a guy who's like never been able to put weight on. I mean, like you look at him, like compared to other guys, like he's just never been, big up here at all. And he's suddenly dealing with like having to deal with this weight. And he was hating it. He was just hating every day. So we see him in Carmel and he looks really, really fit. Just much better, face looks fine. He was really puffy in April and that was kind of all gone. And so, from what we could tell, he's moving around well. Obviously he's at a kids camp. And so in this, he's in one of these standard camps called pro camps. Like basically they do a lot of camps for athletes. And there's always a deal where you like, if you're a kid, your parents can pay to let you play them one-on-one, play the pro one-on-one. So, I mean, like he's giving it 5% effort, maybe, that's, I mean, he's playing like 10-year-olds. But like he still made shots. Like you still saw him moving around. Okay. And he told us, he's like, I feel great. He's like, I don't feel this like my top level condition. He's like, but I got 3 months to get there. So on one hand, you look at it and say, all right, like he really got that conditioning back going. Just all of that's better, basically. But just the question, I think, is, and the way the Pacers are viewing this is the explosion going to be there? I mean, I think they think he's going to be able to step in, hit shots, run the offense, kick the ball ahead, pass the ball well. It's a question of, okay, is he going to have that kind of explosion? Like, I mean, he's not feeling pain in the leg. It's a question of like, do you still have the juice in it when it's been surgically repaired?
Right.
And that's a thing. I think sometimes some people do and some people don't. I'm seeing these comments like Hallie did dunk on a 4-foot kid, and he also was swatting shots away. But there was one kid who played him really well, like got to the rim on him and actually beat him. There was like he lost a couple games, like kind of on technicalities, but he lost one on a kid really got him. I mean, the kid hit 2 threes and had this really great crossover move to get to the rim for a left-handed finish. Right-handed kid, left-handed finish. He had to be like 12. So like, you were reminded of Indiana schooling from basketball for this kid. I'm watching it and I was like, okay, like that kid's going to stick a 3 in somebody's eye at a sectional in like 4 or 5 years. Like, remember this kid's name. And I can't remember his kid's name. I think it was Ryan or something, but he's going to be pretty good. But yeah, you saw enough of it, but the Chad Buchanan, when he had kind of a media availability out last week, also said, he was like, well, like we're thinking like we're going to have to give him grace here, and everybody's going to have to give him grace. And that's something like I've been saying for a while, like he might not walk into, day one in the opener and be the Tyrese Haliburton you remember. Like, don't, I mean, he could, you never know. Like, you don't want to, say that it's not possible for somebody to succeed. But, you are talking about a major surgery. He's going to have had a lot of time to deal with it and get better and whatnot. But it might take a minute for him to feel like himself. He might never get, maybe he'll get the explosion back. Maybe he won't. If he doesn't, he's going to have to figure out how to play without it. And that itself, is an evolution. Like you have to figure out, okay, like I'm not going to have that again. How do I still be effective if I don't have that? If I still don't have so you're really looking for, is he going to be able to blow by people? Because that's a big thing. It's like when he gets a ball screen, he can really get downhill fast and either take 2 defenders with him and, open up an easy, pick and pop or, pick and roll for somebody else or just get all the way to the rim on somebody. And so like, if he can't do that, that's a significant loss to his game. Now, that's not the only part of his game. Obviously he's an excellent 3-point shooter. He can hit in the mid range. He's a fantastic passer. All those kinds of things. It's just a question of, is that going to be there? How long is it going to take? You've seen him struggle before, like last year he struggled. Last year he had a really hard time making shots at the beginning of the year. I can't remember what his true percentage was as of like the end of November, but it was brutal. And he was having a really, really hard time with it, but he got it back together and ends up having an all-NBA season. Was fantastic after the All-Star break. So it could be a season like that where, they don't get started as good as you think. And it eventually happens in February, March, where you start to see them pick up and get better because Haliburton's getting better to, getting more, more back to himself. So I would say that they see a lot of good signs. He sees a lot of good signs, but they're sort of preparing themselves that when it finally hits the air and he's going against NBA defenders, that they could see that there's further to go at that point. And so they're kind of bracing themselves for that and trying to make sure that they're prepared for that. And they're not, betting on him being, playoff Haliburton when he gets back on in October.
Right. Well, it's good to hear because he's an important factor in that team and has been for, his tenure with the Pacers and such. But let's look at the broader zoom out level, I guess you could say, for the NBA and some of these opportunities or trades and free agency. What was the one that maybe you looked at and said, wow, that was a big one? Because I think you got this one with Philadelphia. I think they got Brown and some others are in there. If this graphic figures out right. But what are some of the big trades or free agency signings that you stepped back and said, whoa, they really picked up some talent there.
Yeah, no, there were a bunch there were like wow moments. I think the Jaylen Brown trade is the biggest wow moment. Like, what was Boston doing here? Because I think, like the issue kind of cascaded to that point, starting with the fact that Boston was involved trying to get Giannis Giannis Antetokounmpo from Milwaukee, and apparently Jaylen Brown was the offer. Now, like if you're going and swinging big for Giannis, like the way the NBA works, like you have to match salary. Like it's not like baseball, you can send a whole bunch of minor league guys that you really like to get a superstar. Like they don't have to. How much everybody makes doesn't make a difference in baseball. But in the NBA, like if you're, sending for a superstar, like you've got to come close to match salary. It doesn't have to be exact. There's leeway in there. But and you can do deals with trade exceptions or with people that have salary cap room to make it work. There's exceptions to this, but for the most part, when you're talking about getting a superstar, there's got to be equivalent money that hands in terms of player salaries. So if you're Boston and you're interested in Giannis, you can't really do it without offering Brown or Tatum. Like it doesn't really fit that way. There's and you knew that like you can't stack their role players together and get to the number that you would have to get to Giannis, because this is a guy in a supermax contract. He makes as much as you can make in this league. And so, like as soon as it comes down that Boston does not get that he goes to Miami for like 3 guys, there was this thought of, oh my God, what are they going to do with Jaylen Brown? He's going to be so upset. He's going to be so this. And I'm like, everybody calm down. Like, okay, like he's going to be miffed for a while. He's going to go say something on a podcast, but he'll live. Like go, like Joe Mazzulla will chill him out. Brad Stevens will chill him out. He'll come back and everybody in Tatum will be fine. Like, him and Tatum will be fine in the whole bit. So when they make that move, I'm like, oh man, I guess it wasn't okay. And they move him for Paul George. And Paul George obviously is and has been a terrific player, but he's 36, 37. You're not getting that many more years of high caliber right. Paul George. He's missed a lot of time with injuries. Last year, because he was trying to deal with injuries, he missed time with by violating the substance or the basically their drug rules. So he was obviously taking something, I guess, to get healthy that wasn't approved. So like. It's like, yeah, you're getting a good player. You're going to run Paul George and Jason Tatum out there, but you're dealing with a guy. Tatum, Brown was 6th in the MVP voting. And there was a really good case. to argue that he was, the best player in the Eastern Conference, in the regular season last year. I mean, Boston was missing Tatum most of the year with his Achilles, and he carried that group. And so, there was all this talk after about, well, he doesn't show up as well in analytics. I'm like, watch a game, man. Like, Jaylen Brown's their best player, and they were second in the East. Like, what else do you want? He's been terrific. And so, like, I was stunned that they felt like they got to the point where they had to move him, and then they had to accept, a 37-year-old player is the big piece in that deal. Because Boston got a lot of draft picks, and that's helpful. And draft picks matter as far as these trades are concerned. But Boston should be in win now position as well. I mean, they're
Correct.
2 years removed from a championship. They still have, a guy who's going to be, a generational player in Jason Tatum. And the Brown Tatum partnership, I mean, I think it bothers Brown that maybe he's not considered at Tatum's level. But again, they won a title together, and he was all NBA. And I guess he had some comments saying, well, this was my favorite year because I got to be the guy. It's like, well, yes, he said that. Who cares? They're going to be really good. If they would have just stood pat, they would be really good. And it's like, just convince them, like, hey, yeah, we made a move for Giannis. Giannis is a top 75 player all time if he's not a top 20 player all time. Like, you're fine. We like you. We just were interested in this guy. I feel like it could have worked. So the fact they made, I thought, a panic move was kind of the biggest shocking thing. Now you put Jaylen Brown with Philly, though. And him and Maxey and if Embiid is healthy is the biggest question because he's never healthy. But even if you just have him with Maxey and Edgecombe, that's trouble, man. I mean, Edgecombe's getting good fast. Maxey is an all NBA caliber player. So that's three guys that, even if you don't have a healthy Embiid and, you do got to figure that out long term, they're going to be really good. Obviously the Giannis move is a big deal. Like you knew he was going to move. There was obviously a whole bunch of trending in that direction. But, when a guy that big, changes teams, it changes the balance of power in the league. Certainly makes Miami a lot better. The John Morant trade was interesting going to Portland. And certainly you still have a big piece about to move in LeBron James. He's already told the Lakers that he's going to move. He has a chance to still make a difference again in the balance of power because, he's not going to be the best player on anybody's team at this point. But he can be the best player for a night, he won, Reeves was out for part of it and Doncic was out for all of that Rockets series. And that's a talented Rockets team. And Bron put that, really put the Lakers on his back in that series. And so he can still do that. He's still got that left in him. He might not be able to do it night after night. And he's not going to be able to do that, on back-to-backs. He's still going to take back-to-backs off, he's too old to play on a back, play both nights of a back-to-back for the most part. But you get him in a playoff series, and you give him days between games and you can still see an all NBA caliber player. And so if he goes to, I think Philly's interested, Cleveland's interested, Miami's interested. If he comes back to the East, that can change things. And I think that, the joke is that if he went to the Warriors, they would be the Expendables.
Right.
And that would be hilarious. They wouldn't be hilarious. I mean, they'd be good. I mean, I don't think they could take down the Thunder or the Spurs, but they'd be trouble in that league.
Oh, yeah.
Steph and LeBron would still be trouble in that league. I mean, I think they'd still finish top 4 in the West and give somebody problems. Again, I'm like, I'd be surprised if it's not Oklahoma City and San Antonio at the end. I thought San Antonio got a great get in Tobias Harris. I think that was really, really helpful. Not under the radar addition, but that was one of those guys that you're like, if San Antonio was only going to be able to make such a big move, but Harris fits in as okay. That's the serious person's move for where they stand. So, wherever LeBron goes is still going to make an impact.
What's I guess under the radar, whether it be a free agent signing trade that is not being talked enough about, would you say?
Man, I mean, honestly, the Pacers getting Oubre probably isn't getting as much national attention as it deserves. I'm trying to think. There were some others I really liked. I'm trying to remember, because it they happened so fast, in that morning, and I was like, wow, in July 1, they didn't happen very fast on July 30th. Kawhi, I have to mention Kawhi the Raptors. That's not an under discussed one, but that's huge. That's a really big. him coming back to the East. And that really makes Toronto an Eastern contender. You put him and Scotty Barnes together, and they have a chance to be real trouble. Like, you're going to have a hard time scoring on that team, and they're going to be able to run on you. So like, that's a big one. I mean, a small one that's like a bench guy, like Andre Drummond going to the Knicks, I really, really like, them moving on from, they were in a position where they were kind of in a tight spot to keep that group together. And Andre Drummond could really, really rebound the basketball still. So I thought that was, if they were going to lose Mitchell Robinson, not be able to pay him the money, being able to step up and get Andre Drummond was a big deal. The Charlotte deal, like, them trading LaMelo Ball to Minnesota is bizarre. I think that's a really weird one. Him and Anthony Edwards, you're going to be like, what is going to happen here? Like, that's going to be strange, because they moved on from, they traded Naz Reid. They, who did they let go? They traded Naz Reid and Julius Randle and got LaMelo Ball. And I'm just like,
yeah,
that's certainly bold. That's certainly a choice. I'm trying to think. I feel like there was Oklahoma City picking up its guys was, not a bit of a surprise to me, but I wasn't sure if they were going to have to let somebody walk, and they were able to keep Hartenstein and Dort. They moved on from a couple, Wiggins and Isaiah Joe. I think are going to be good fits elsewhere. Isaiah Joe going to, Detroit really helps them. They needed a shooter really bad. They were able to keep, Kevin Huerter and Duncan Robinson as well. They really needed shooting, and they were able to keep stuff. There as far as like lower, mid-level, mid-tier free agent signings. Who else was I thinking of? There was one more that I was like considering that I thought was really interesting. All of a sudden I'm blanking. Yeah, I mean, God, there were so many.
I mean, there was a lot there that, like you said, there was whap. I mean, it came out of the gate firing.
Yeah,
normally it takes a day.
Tim Hardaway to Miami. Is another
that's right.
I think Hardaway. He's probably on a veteran minimum deal again. I mean, he was top 3 in the 6-man last year when he was in Denver. I'm like, who let this happen? Like how did you guys put how did the league, let Hardaway end up on a team with Joker? Like you guys really thought that was going to be okay for you, that you put that kind of shooter next to Joker? Like he's going to rip everybody, in this league just by standing still and waiting for the ball to find him. And, Miami, it'll be a similar deal. Giannis is going to be able to create a lot of, gravity and whatnot. And Hardaway's just going to stand there on the perimeter and wait and drill stuff on you. Kennard, where did Kennard end up? I was surprised that a little surprised that the Pacers didn't go after him, because I thought he'd be good.
I can't. I'm looking for it real quick, but that's okay. If you look at the last question here, because I get you out of here. When you look at all this and the dust is kind of settling, and like you said, Pacers really don't have a room to do anything right now. How do you see the Pacers stacking up in the East right now? Where would you place them? I mean, in the East.
I still put them in the top 4. I mean, I think they are a little bit out of sight, out of mind. I think you're going to see. You're certainly not hearing a lot of talk about them. I thought going into free agency, I think night one, the ESPN did this big special where they talked for like 3 hours and barely anything happened on June 30th. And they did this deal where like you had to spin, they had these all their talking heads in there, and they had to spin a wheel and get to somebody and talk about what their free agency is going to be like. And I think one of the reporters that was on there got the Pacers, and it was like, I don't even know what to say. And Bobby Marks, who's kind of like their front office, the guy who's worked in the front office and can explain it really well, stepped up and said, okay, well, like for the Pacers, this is going to be the summer of extensions. They're going to have decisions to make about, Pascal Siakam, but, they're going to be in a good place. They're going to be fine. And then Bobby saw when they made the Oubre sign, they're like, don't sleep on this team, and Bobby really is a guy who's really dialed in terms of how all this stuff works. And so he knew how little they had to work with and how much they took up with this one decision. And so I think people that are really looking at this are going to take time and step back and kind of look at, when you really look at everybody's roster, you're going to say, okay, well, where does this Pacers group fit in? And I think they're still going to be put top 4, top 5 in the East. You're certainly going to look at the Knicks because they're defending champs, and you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think you've got to put Toronto up there with Leonard and Barnes, and Quickly and Barrett. I mean, they were a 5 team in the East last year. They're better. Getting Leonard for Ingram makes them better. Certainly the issue is how many games you get out of Leonard, because he always gets hurt. But, when you get Kawhi and Barnes together, they're going to be trouble. You've got to put Philly in there. They obviously were able to beat Boston in that, playoff series last year. They were already trending upwards. You upgrade to Jaylen Brown from Paul George, they get better. So I think you got to put those 3 teams in there. You got to consider Boston still on the fringe, when you're going to have Tatum and George. At least, you're going to have another good couple of years in there. But I think the Pacers belong in that spot. I think if I would say, the Knicks, Philly, Toronto, and the Pacers there. Cleveland still has to be there. I mean, they didn't get a lot worse. Right. They're still going to be dealing with just the confidence issue of having lost that series the way they did to New York, to blow a game 1 lead and then just not get up from the canvas. And they did not make a big move. But if they get LeBron, if you throw LeBron in with Mitchell and Mobley and Harden, and Allen, okay, like they're right there as well. But I do think the Pacers still belong in the top 4 in the East. And not only that, I mean, remember, like, they were 4th in the East when they went to the finals. They didn't run away with that league during the year. Everybody thought it was going to be Boston and Cleveland in the Eastern Conference Finals. I certainly did. I picked that. And the Pacers ended up, Cleveland won 64 games. And the Pacers blitzed them, 4-1 in that series. So, they are also a team that they might be 4th, 5th in the East for most of the year. They were 6th when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals the year before, so it's like their seeding doesn't kill them. They're capable of winning, playoff series as the road team. So, you could watch them all year and be like, oh, I don't know about this. And they could get into playoffs and turn it all around. And they're going to operate differently with Zubac instead of Turner. But, got every reason to believe they're going to be a playoff team again. And got every reason to believe that if you get them in the tournament, they got a crack at it. And so even if they're not the best team in the East all year, they could be the best team in the East.
Right. And I kind of feel like where you had them is probably the realistic spot, in that top 4. And, they may not have the most talented roster, but can they play above their talent and do it consistently? And like you said, be a hot team come playoff time. So those are all questions to be answered, I guess you could say, but appreciate you joining us here again today and all your great knowledge on the Pacers. Make sure you get over to the Indy Star. Dustin will have everything and anything that is Pacer related all summer long. Dustin, we'll see you next week, I'm sure. But
yes, you
appreciate you being with us here today on this Monday.
Absolutely. Sorry to be late, Griff. And thoughts out again for Jim, man.
Yeah, you too, buddy. And I'll pass that along. Dustin Dopirak from the Indianapolis Star. We're going to step aside. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the World Cup as well as some other things right here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Dave & Buster's Bloomington is the place to eat, drink, play, and watch. Enjoy half-price games Sunday through Thursday, plus a new menu and next-level upgrades like private game suites and the high-flying human crane. Only at Dave & Buster's Bloomington on South College Mall Road.
Zach Browning here to tell you about an offer you simply can't pass up. If you're looking for the best coverage of Indiana football and basketball, which includes recruiting, weekly chats, podcasts, as well as access to the best national team out there, then look no further than thehoosier.com. The best part, it's just $1 for the first week. Oh, and did I mention that you get a full year of access to The Athletic when you sign up? You can't beat the coverage and you can't beat the deal. So head over to thehoosier.com today and sign up for just $1. It'll be the best decision you ever made.
You're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area? You need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington has the deals for you, like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Andy Moore Honda Bloomington's 2026 models, like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on The Zone by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Bored, Bloomington? Dave and Buster's can fix that. Eat and drink your way through our new menu. Play half-price games every Sunday through Thursday. Watch your teams on the big screen and level it all up with the high-flying human crane. Private game suites and more, only at 731 South College Ball Road.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on a Monday. Sitting in for Jim Coyle. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. Appreciate you all being with us here. Couple things here in this last segment that we got today. And then this is kind of going back to the World Cup, kind of setting up this game this evening in Seattle for Team USA against Belgium. As you can see, kind of where everybody's at and all their statistics thus far. And again, the odds really shifted after that decision on, I believe it was the other day, yesterday or Friday, maybe been earlier than that, but I can't remember. It's been all kind of running together with this holiday. But anyway, again, you got to like Team USA's chance against Belgium tonight in this round of 16. It's not going to be easy, of course. There's just not going to be easy. This is going to be a game that, I think if the USA team continues to play aggressively, sound defensively, and really forces the play, I really like them and the chance to beat Belgium. But if they, kind of sit back and not do some of the things that they've done to date, Belgium's the type of team that can put it in the back of your net pretty darn quick. And they already beat them once, and I think it was early on in the kind of what they call a preseason, but Belgium beat them, I think, 5-3, if memory serves me correct. But again, a lot of things there tonight going on with that. Again, one question I had coming out of the media day segment as well is when you look at it, again, this college football is centered around the quarterback, and the vast majority of conversations, there's a lot of things that go into having a top quarterback because he's only as good as his surrounding teammates. But who has the best quarterback situation in the country? That's a question. Julian Sayin at Ohio State, again, a very productive offensive line, running game, and then a pretty good wide receiver core. Is it going to be Hoover here at Indiana with what he's got around him? Arch Manning at Texas. I mean, there's a lot of quarterback situations out there you look at and who has that best situation. So a good one there. Which coach is under the most pressure this year? I got to feel that, Riley out at USC, I think he's going to be one that's going to be on a hot seat in that respect. Yeah, I could see Oregon. Yeah. Yep. Of course, I wasn't a big Dante Moore fan a year ago. I just didn't think he had a great year in the games that I saw him. Of course, Indiana pretty much stifled him, but he was not as good in those games. But I think a lot had to do with Indiana's defense. So, but there's a lot of conversations there, and where does Indiana fit in all this? And again, coming out of the talking season, we'll find out. Get a lot of talking, but we're going to have a robust discussion as we head into the season coming up here in about a month. It's not too far away, and a lot of things there. But again, Indiana has to be a team that is going to be a high team in the Big Ten. I don't know if they'll get the top spot. There's just something about them putting Ohio State there in a lot of ways, which is okay. I mean, again, we make too much out of the preseason stuff. It's just like the preseason polls or rankings and stuff. They're not valid or useful because you don't have what teams will do in terms of where they're going to be. I always say let 3 to 4 weeks go by before you do any rankings, because then you have some data to draw some conclusions on who are those top teams in college football. Sometimes they rank teams way too high, trying to give them the benefit of the doubt for a couple weeks, and they find out that they're not as good as that they were talking they would be, and they forget about the teams that should be in those categories because they're worried about Team A instead of Team B. But I've always said, wait those first few weeks. Do not do any type of preseason rankings and stuff, and have more data to make logical conclusions with everything. But it's one of those things that it's always going to be in that respect. Yeah, I could see Deion having the hot seat there. Absolutely. Out in Colorado. I think I think he's got to the point now where it's time for them to either kind of put up or shut up in some respects. But again, Colorado is going to be one of those places that's always going to be difficult to have any, I would think, success, on the longevity side of it. But again, we'll see what Deion's able to pull out in that respect. So the other question I think that's going to be on everybody's mind into this season, are we going to see more expansion in college football? Everybody seems to think yes. There are rumors already swirling about Utah, a possible Big Ten member, and maybe some of those Pac-12 schools that kind of got left in the dust, Oregon State and Washington State, from the simple reason of having more teams in the Western footprint that you can schedule and not put the burden of travel on a lot of the other West Coast teams. So that will be a big conversation as well. So we'll figure all that when it comes time and everything. But again, it's all determined there coming out of the talking season, and there'll be a lot of questions that will go unanswered until the seasons get started and underway. And the other coach in the Big Ten that you got to think is on a little bit of a hot seat is Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. That one has just not materialized like everybody thought it would. And when they made the hire of Luke Fickell at Wisconsin, I thought it was a great hire. I thought he met the mentality there at Wisconsin and could bring back some of that raw toughness and being able to run the football as such. But he kind of never got to that point. And I got a feeling that his seat's a little hot there as well. So we're going to take our final break. We'll come back. We'll wrap up this Monday all right here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Dave & Buster's Bloomington is the place to eat, drink, play, and watch. Enjoy half-price games Sunday through Thursday, plus a new menu and next-level upgrades like private game suites and the high-flying human crane. Only at Dave & Buster's Bloomington on South College Mall Road.
Zach Browning here to tell you about an offer you simply can't pass up. If you're looking for the best coverage of Indiana football and basketball, which includes recruiting, weekly chats, podcasts, as well as access to the best national team out there, then look no further than thehoosier.com. The best part, it's just $1 for the first week. Oh, and did I mention that you get a full year of access to The Athletic when you sign up? You can't beat the coverage and you can't beat the deal. So head over to thehoosier.com today and sign up for just $1. It'll be the best decision you ever made.
You're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area? You need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemoreSells@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington has the deals for you you like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington's 2026 models like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on The Zone by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Bored, Bloomington? Dave & Buster's can fix that. Eat and drink your way through our new menu. Play half-price games every Sunday through Thursday. Watch your teams on the big screen and level it all up with the high-flying human crane. Private game suites and more, only at 731 South College Ball Road.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.